Alright, we're going to try doing Hannibal here. I'm a little... as I put it, I'm having a crisis of duty. But this is a game covering, what, the Second Punic War, right? You have... this is the traditional Hannibal war here. There are a lot of games on Hannibal. I've played a couple of them. Not too many. I've played one of the magazine games, and I've played Hannibal, Rome versus Carthage. This one's my favorite of them from what I remember. It's very light, but then again, most of them are. But the rules are not terribly easy to decipher. This is an all-console game. They made like 3 games total or something. 2 of them are war games. I'd love to get the other war game they made, which is Mohawk, but I haven't seen it at a cheap price yet. So I'm keeping an eye out for it, but I don't have my hopes high because apparently very few were created. It's going to be an area game. And you've got all the fun toys in here. You've got Syracuse. You've got the Macedonians. You have all the different Roman consuls. The major leaders on the Carthaginian side. The game does really spotlight Hannibal himself and makes him far and away the best leader in the game. You can see his ratings at 12. Let's see. Scipio here is only a 7, which isn't terribly good. But what's important is people also flip over. You can see a number of others. Nero has a high rating. I don't know who that is. I recognize many of the others. I'm not sure Gracchus is there. We got Fabius, who turns not terribly good, but he has his advantages. We also have a set of cards which are going to influence play significantly. They're sort of events, and we'll see how they come out. I don't remember too much about them. You have troops, which I believe have 2 values on them. An attack value and a defense value, if I'm not mistaken, which is how many hits they take, if I recall correctly. I've read the rules recently, but you know, they didn't sink in, and that's part of why I kind of fell away from I didn't play it right away. I read the rules back on Friday. It's Sunday now, and well, I'm going to try to go through them with you. Unfortunately, nobody else does this, so you don't have anywhere better to look than me. All right, but it's a rare game. Okay, so here's the sequence of play. Carthaginians first have a Senate phase where they find out what they can do. Then they take their actions. They're allowed to draw action cards, and then they get recruitment. And then we go through the same basic thing with the Romans, except they have this consular election phase where they replenish their consuls. All right, so in the Senate phase, what you're going to be doing is you're going to roll a single die essentially on the table based on who you are. And that die, it's just one die. Yeah. That die will tell you a number of things. Where you can go, how many new units you get, and how many total actions you're allowed to take during your turn. So the Senate will always allow you to move to one of the theaters, but the movement may be dependent upon what you're talking about. So for example, army to someplace means you can invade it. Reinforce means you can only move those troops in there if you have troops already there. You can throw more in. The new units go in the capital. And the last factor is how many leaders or groups of naval units that you can actually take an action with. All right. If you're not in one of the units that's been assigned an action, then you can take movement, but it counts as an extended move and requires an attrition roll. The Senate roll is modified, and you can see some of the effects here. So Carthage, for example, doesn't really necessarily... Carthage wants a low number to get their option value. But that's not guaranteed because you might need troops, so you're not sure what you're going to get from the Senate in any particular time. The more the Romans have taken, the less likely the Carthaginians are willing to give you a free rein to do something kind of exploratory. You can always move into Africa as the Carthaginians. You can always move into Italy, I believe, as the Romans. For the Romans, well, again, the further on they're going, Sicily and Africa, if they own them, or if they have units in them, they get a bonus. If Hannibal is not ravaging Italy, that's a big bonus. They want a high number as opposed to the low numbers. But if they've lost battles or something, well, then they're going to start having more trouble in the situation. If Carthage controls all 5 cities in any area in Italy, yeah. So we have... I think the cities are, I think the color marking indicates area. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. But this gets complicated. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I'm not sure. Does it say all 5 cities in any area? Yeah. I'm looking for area boundaries on this for the red stuff. How that all 5 cities would be judged for those. And I'm not quite sure how that's going to go. We have 1, 2 in the north. Oh, 3, 4, 5. Gotcha. And this is a different color down here. All right. So yeah, the different areas have different colors. Okay. God. Yeah. Once a leader is given an action allowed by the Senate, he's allowed to move his unit until he's finished that action. He may move until he's finished his action phase. The leader finishes when another leader starts moving. A leader can either concentrate or disperse his units in the zone that he occupies. The zones are separated by these little dashed lines as opposed to the areas. Dispersing allows you to throw them into the city, so you can reinforce your cities with troops. Concentrating allows you to pull all your troops together into a mobile force that you can attack with. Then he can move the units with him into friendly cities in the zone he's in. Combat's a function of the action phase. These rules are really bad. And no leader can initiate combat during his part of the turn unless he takes one of the allowed actions or performs an extended march. If he crosses a mountain, I think those are simply delineated by the line here, where it kind of shows mountainous terrain on the board. And does not move through a city that controls a pass through the mountain, he must suffer an attrition roll. If he wishes, he can attack a city that controls the pass, and if he takes it, he doesn't suffer. But if he fails, he must retreat from the zone, or back to the zone he came from, and end his move for that year. After an action phase, he can perform an extended march. He rolls attrition or plays an extended march option card. An extended march gives the player another action phase. It doesn't count as one of the actions allowed by the Senate. There's no limit to the number of times a leader can take these, except he must play an extended march option card or take attrition for each attempt. And if all of his units are eliminated, so is he. And his opponent gets an option card. You roll a die on the attrition, and you take that many units in losses. Hannibal gets a -1 to his attrition penalty. Rome is considered to be in both zones 4 and 6. I don't know how they number these. There are numbers here, but those don't really match the colors. So like the numbers appear to be the areas. So this is 7, this is 6. What I think they're saying is Rome is part of pink. I don't know. See, it's in between 3 and 5, not 4 and 6. So maybe that's what they mean. But there are others that are in between too. So if you own Capua and something else, Luceria, you can move with it between 4 and 5 without rolling for attrition. Luceria's here. Normally you could do that, I think. I'm not quite sure about that. And no, Capua is not on the border there. So yeah, if you own these two, I guess you can slip your way in this way instead of having to go through Cortinium or whatever. So, naval movement. Naval units don't require a leader to move. However, they still require the use of an action phase to move a group of naval units. They can either be at sea or in port. Only units at sea may be attacked, and units in port are not affected by storms at sea. Once a group of naval units is given an action, they may move to an adjacent sea zone and continue to move to other adjacent sea zones until they reach their destination with the approval of their Senate. During this move, they must attack any enemy naval units that occupy a sea zone they move into, provided these units are at sea. If they lose a naval battle or if they enter a sea zone they have already moved through, they must return to the nearest friendly port without moving through any other enemy naval units. If they cannot return to a friendly port this way, they're eliminated, and they can pick up or drop off naval units as they desire. Okay, land units can also move by sea. You can never move more land units by sea than you have naval factors in play, but the naval factors don't actually carry them. The land units need not begin with or be accompanied by naval units. In one turn, you can embark from a friendly port in the zone you start your move from. Then move to any other friendly port and disembark and finish your action phase in that zone. If you don't embark or disembark at a friendly port, you must capture one or suffer attrition. Leaders that move by sea do not count towards the naval unit lift capacity. Land units may never enter a sea zone that has enemy naval units at sea. A leader and troops may enter or leave a besieged port by sea as long as there are no enemy naval units in the sea zone. Land units may not end their move at sea. There are storms at sea cards, which you play during your at the end of your phases before the opponent begins his. That affects all naval units in a zone that's played upon. You know I don't like cards that control the weather, but this is a pretty light game, so what the hell. When a storm at sea occurs, roll 1 die for each naval unit in the sea zone. A 1 or 2 causes no effect. A 3, 4, or 5 causes it to return to port, and they cannot move during the rest of the turn. A result of 6 sinks a naval unit. If there are no friendly ports in the sea zone, the naval unit sinks on a 3, 4, 5, or 6. You're allowed to retreat all your naval units to port, but then they're treated as if they were forced there by the storm and can't leave. Spain and Gaul. We have Spain over in this offset box. Gaul is up here, covering all of Gaul, really. You may move by sea between Spain and Italy and between Spain and Africa. That doesn't sound like Spain and Gaul should be the title of the rule. Only land movement is allowed between Spain and Gaul and between Italy and Gaul. If a player moves by land between Italy and Spain, zoom back out. I'm not really paying attention to what I'm doing here. This is really tough. And he doesn't control Turin or Genoa, he must roll for attrition. Now that kind of makes sense. Those are your your mountain pass holdings there. If a player moves between Italy and Gaul and he doesn't control Turin or Mediolanum. I don't know what Mediolanum is. Terms here, I guess it's this. It's hard to read on this board. Doesn't look too bad when I zoom right in, but unfortunately my face doesn't go as well as this camera. Okay. A player may move by land between Spain and Numidia. Zooming up there. Any player who enters Gaul must roll for Gallic attrition, unless he has Gallic aid. Should a player enter Gaul from Italy and didn't control one of the two above cities, he would then have to roll attrition twice, once for the Gauls and once for crossing the mountains. If a leader loses a battle during his action phase, he may retreat to a friendly city in the zone or to a friendly city in the zone he came from. He must end his turn there and may not make another extended march that turn. If he retreats during his opponent's action phase, he may retreat to any friendly city in that zone, and if none are present, he may retreat to an adjacent zone. Should the retreating player have to enter another zone by crossing a mountain, he must roll for attrition. Combat happens during action. It can also happen as a sally or as an intercept. There's no limit to the number of battles that can be caused by a leader or group of naval units. There are 3 possible results a unit can get during combat: a miss, a hit, and a rout. A miss has no effect on the unit. A hit causes a defense factor to be eliminated. A rout causes a unit to run away. Now, we're going to be using, there's this weird little battle table here, and I don't fully understand it like anything in the game. You know, I haven't played this much. I remember being pretty impressed by it, but we'll see. I know I'm not impressed by the rolls. Okay, hit causes a defense factor, a rout causes to run away. Except in a pursuit, the owning player determines his own losses, and a player must always eliminate at least as many defense factors as called for during a round. He must then rout the number of units called for. That's units, not factors. All losses come out of the front line, and should there not be enough, the remainder comes out of the reserve. And if there's not enough there, the rest must come from routed units. Routed units are all considered to have a defense factor of 1 for this. Should a player not have enough units to rout, he must rout units in his reserve, and if he doesn't have enough there, he must eliminate routed units. There's 4 types of combat: pitched battles, storming cities, sieges, and naval battles. Each will be discussed in order. Yeah, I'm just reading these to you, folks. Except in sieges or unless Hannibal or Fabius is present, all combat lasts at least 2 rounds before a player is allowed to retreat. A pitched battle occurs when a leader's in a zone during his action phase and there are any enemy units that are not in any kind of city in the same zone. Short rolls. The attacker and defender places up to 8 land combat units in his front line, which will be these 2 spaces on there. And the rest are placed in reserve. The attacker and the defender roll a die for each attack factor in the front line. Remember, that's the value to the left. And each player removes all eliminated units and moves all his routed units to the appropriate place on the battlefield display. Now, we have routed this turn and previously routed, and I don't know what that's about. All right. Then each player is allowed to reinforce his front line with troops from his reserve. And he can replace killed and routed units, but he can't have more than 8 units in the front line. The battle continues until all of one player's units are killed or routed, or if he chooses to retreat. He must retreat if everything's routed, basically. If a player retreats, he may suffer pursuit, and at the end of the battle and after any pursuit, all routed units are rallied. We'll get to what the attacking works like, but we'll continue through the different types of combat for whatever reason, because that's how the rules are organized, and that's what we're going to do. There are 3 types of cities. Capital cities, which are Rome, Carthage, Syracuse. They're going to have 3 gates on the front of them. There are major cities with 2 gates on them, and then minor cities with only 1. If you're going to storm a city, the attacker and defender each put 8 units in the front line. The defender must include any intrinsic garrison. We've got these garrison units. I had wondered what they were. They just look like this. They're double-sided. Any remaining units are put in reserve. Each player rolls 1 die for each attack factor with the following modifications. All the defending units get a +1 for defending the wall to their attack. The defender ignores all rout results. All losses are removed and both sides may reinforce their front line. The defender must lose his intrinsic garrison units before any other units. Combat continues until a side is eliminated or forced to retreat. The attacker never suffers pursuit when retreating. The intrinsic garrisons are 5 for capitals, 4 for major, 2 for minor. At the start of all stormings, or any storming, an intrinsic garrison is at full strength unless it's been reduced by siege. At the end of the storming, all routed units are rallied, and the intrinsic units recover, which is why you must take them as casualties. Well, you can't try to game the system to take a larger unit, I guess, at an early stage. All right, besieging. Besieging uses these markers, which indicate the extent of the siege. There's not a lot of them. You can besiege a city instead of storming it. You're moving. You end your leader action phase on top of the city to be besieged. You put a siege marker with the number 1 on top. At the beginning of each part of a leader's turn, you place a siege... I don't know what that each part is supposed to mean. You place a siege marker with the next higher number on top of the city. When the siege marker reaches 2, all the intrinsic garrison units in a city, major or minor, are killed. Oh, I think it's at the beginning of each leader's turn or something. I have no idea. They make up their words, but I'm going to say that only happens once per turn. When the siege marker reaches 2, all the intrinsic garrison units in the city are killed, and the attacker would be a +1 on the attack die if he decides to storm the city. Once the siege marker reaches 3, all the units in a major or minor city will be eliminated. The city essentially is going to surrender at that point. If it's a capital city, the attacker would be +1 on his attack when the marker reaches 3. If it's a capital city under siege, the intrinsic garrison is eliminated on a 4. When the marker reaches 5, a capital will surrender. The defender may at any time, even during his opponent's part of the turn, like as the number's about to change, I guess, sally out and fight a pitched battle. If he loses, he may retreat back into the city after any pursuit, but he will get pursued. If at any time there's no leader and or land units in the besieging force other than one up for re-election, the siege is broken. Naval combat occurs when you move your naval units into a sea zone occupied by the enemy naval units. Leaders have no effect, and the attacker and defender put a maximum of 8 naval factors in their front line. Now, naval units have a reverse side with only 1 factor. That's a step loss, basically. I don't think infantry has any such thing. Or cav, for that matter. I think cav's not allowed to assault a city, too. I don't know if I saw that in the rolls so far, but I seem to remember that from the last reading. Both players roll a die for each factor and remove all losses. After 2 rounds of naval combat, either player may retreat and there is no pursuit. Okay. Some units have a circle on their attack factor. They're going to get a +1 on their die roll. It's like in Victory in the Pacific there. It's possible you could have multiple +1s too, I believe. When a player decides to retreat, he may suffer pursuit. The other player may pursue with his unrouted cavalry, And the retreating player may only defend with unrouted cavalry. Each player rolls 1 die for each cavalry attack factor involved. The pursuing player having an additional +1. That's how you can get +2 on the die roll. And each hit on the pursuing player will eliminate 1 defense factor of pursuing cavalry, determined by the pursuing factor player. The hits on the pursued player are determined, although it doesn't say it there, I see, again by the pursuing player. And you look on here, so for example, pitched battles and city storming use this table, naval combat uses this one, pursuit uses this one. If there are routed units, a 5 counts as a hit versus them. If a leader is in a zone and not in any city, and an enemy leader enters the zone, other than attacking a city on the border of the non-phasing player, may engage the phasing player in pitched battle. Actually, I think that's required according to a rule we read a little earlier. To win a battle, there must be an enemy leader present. The player who is left on the field of a pitched battle or the one remaining at the end of the siege is the winner of the battle. They get an option card. I believe they also get to upgrade their leader. The leaders are all 12 Roman consuls, the 4 Carthaginian generals, Philip of Macedon and Hippocrates of Syracuse. The leaders can move any number of units. All leaders except Hannibal start with their lower rating on the available, so they can upgrade in the game. If a leader wins a pitched battle or takes a city with an enemy leader present, or is involved in combat with Hannibal and survives at least 2 rounds of combat, he may be promoted to the next higher level. If at the end of any round of combat or pursuit the leader has no units with him, he's eliminated. I assume by may means is. I'm not sure. All eliminated Roman consuls are immediately placed in Rome, or replaced in Rome. What you're going to do is you're going to shuffle a cup full of the remaining consuls, including the one who just died, and pull the new one out, and he goes in Rome. And he'll go with his reduced rating. It indicates another person, not the same guy. The highest ranked rated leader in a pitched battle will be able to give some of his units an attack bonus. That'll be the difference between the ratings. So for example, if good old Hannibal here with a rating of 12 is fighting against Claudius with a rating of 5, he would get 7 additional single +1s. He has to allocate them to different units. If he doesn't have that many units, well, then he doesn't get them all. He can use one of his attack bonus numbers, if he has any, to rally a routed unit each combat round. Hannibal also has cards in his deck that affect his ability to fight. And we'll see they'll be like special Hannibal options. Hannibal also has a -1 on all attrition die rolls. Fabius has special rules, of course. He can retreat from combat at any time. Hannibal can do this too. And if he does, he may suffer pursuit. Same rule applies to Hannibal. Roman consular elections. Each turn, the Roman player must elect at least 2 consuls. He places the one to be re-elected in a cup, and the rest of the consuls not in play, and draws one out at random. And that one takes the place of the one who just got removed. You can re-elect a consul. He doesn't. I don't think he gets. I think he comes back on with his reduced rating though. The Romans can recruit 1 Latin allied unit in each control. So we have these. We have different types of units here. So there's Latin allied. There's regular Roman legions. These are Numidians, Spaniards, which can be either side. Same with Gauls and Cav for the Spaniards and Gauls. I think these are Italian allies for the Carthaginians, their fleets obviously, and then the African forces. They also have Numidians of their own, but less of them. Okay, let's go back. Roman recruitment. The Roman player can recruit 1 Latin allied unit for each controlled major city in Italy, And if he controls all the minor cities in an area, he gets to recruit one extra unit in that area. He may decide to recruit a fleet per port instead of taking a Latin allied unit. In Western Italy, he has the opportunity to take Roman and Latin allied units. And I guess that's the two regions. There was something that talked about two regions or something. I don't know. I think they were talking about these two. Okay. Where's Western Rome? Yeah, Western Italy is these two spaces. They both say Western Italy on them. Whereas these say Eastern Italy here. These say Southern. And those two say Northern. Whatever's. Okay. So you can take Roman and Latin allied units. The Roman player may recruit 2 Spanish units in Spain if he's the only one there. Otherwise, he can only recruit 1. He can recruit 2 Gallic units in Gaul if he's the only one there. Otherwise, only 1. He can recruit a Latin allied unit or a naval unit in Syracuse if he controls it. Except for Western Italy, the Roman player must have a consul present to recruit in any given area. Okay. Right. Carthaginians. They can recruit an Italian unit in every controlled major city in Western, Eastern, and Southern Italy. But not Northern. If he controls all the minor cities in an area, he gets an additional unit for that area. He receives a Gallic unit for each major city he controls in Northern Italy, and if he controls all 3 minor cities, he gets an additional one. He can recruit 3 Spanish units in Spain if there are no Romans present, and he has a general there. If there are Romans present and a Carthaginian general, he may only recruit 1. If there are no Roman units in Gaul and he has a general, he can recruit 3 Gallic units. If there are Romans present and there's a Carthaginian general in Gaul, he may recruit 1 Gallic unit. Gallic? That's how they spell it, damn it. When a city is under siege, it may not recruit any units, nor may it be counted for recruitment purposes. With the exception that Rome and Carthage may recruit for 1 turn after they are under siege. When Rome is under siege, it may raise its units in any city in Western Italy. While Carthage is under siege, it may raise its units over in Utica. And then they have a breakdown of what you can do. At the beginning of the game, the Carthaginians control Carthage, Utica, and Nova Carthaginia. Syracuse is controlled by no one, and Rome controls all the other cities on the map. Control of any city is determined by who last occupied it and who had it in possession at the start of the game. Carthaginian control markers are placed when control falls to them, blah, blah, blah. Anytime a player captures a city in an area of northern, eastern, or southern Italy, one unoccupied city of his choice will come over to his side. If he wins a battle in any of these areas, a city will also attempt to join his side. I don't know what that's supposed to mean. Place upon or remove from an unoccupied city in that area the appropriate control marker. A player can draw an option card during each of his option card phases. He also may draw one whenever he wins a battle. The Roman player, if he has more than 5, he must play one immediately or forfeit a right to draw. If the Carthaginian has more than 6, he must play one or forfeit the right. And you start off with a full hand of them. Macedonian intervention. All right. Should the Carthaginian player control all 5 of the cities in eastern Italy at the beginning of his turn, Macedon will enter the war on the side of Hannibal. You place the Macedonian army, which is contained over here, in any port in eastern Italy or in Zone 2, Gallia Cisalpina up to the top there. If Roman naval units are in the Mare Adriaticum, the Macedonians must enter by way of Gallia Cisalpina. If there are any Macedonian land units storming a city, all the units storming are +1. If Philip is killed, or the Macedonian land units are reduced to less than 3 combat units, or the Romans take any 4 cities in eastern Italy, Macedon will leave the war. And then the entire Macedonian force returns to Macedonia. Syracuse enters the war on the side of Hannibal at the beginning of 210 BC. And let's see if that's marked anywhere other than no. So I'm going to put Hippocrates there to help remind me, because that's the kind of thing I'd easily forget. Syracusan units may not leave Syracuse while it's under siege. Hannibal and Hippocrates are the only leaders who may move those units. All Syracusan units will be removed if it falls to Rome. It'll replace 1 unit per year. If none are available, the Carthaginians may recruit an African unit in Syracuse. Numidia enters the war on the side of Rome if the Romans have any units in Numidia and they play a Numidian treaty option card. They then get 3 cavalry units in Numidia, and they can replace 1 per turn as long as they control the area. Not sure how you control it. It has no cities, but whatever. I guess one can come up with pretty easy solutions to that. The urban legions and the sacred band. So the Romans have the urban legion here, these two elites, and the Carthaginians have the sacred band, which is the same. The urban legions may never leave Rome other than to attack a besieger. The sacred band may never leave Carthage under the same conditions. Some of the action cards don't have full descriptions on them. In particular, Hannibal's tactic and Hannibal on the march. They're spelled out what can be done with them. So, for example, Hannibal could do an ambush. All of his units are doubled for the first 2 rounds of combat, but he can only use this against a leader with a rating of 5 or less, and he can't use it against a city. That makes sense. Surprise! He gets the attack bonus during the first round of combat for all his units, but no other attack bonuses count. During the first round, all hits are considered routs. The Roman doesn't get to return any combat this round, and the round doesn't count towards the 2 rounds of mandatory combat. This option may not be used against any consul with a rating higher than 6, nor against a city. Inspired troops, he can double a unit in his front line and rally any 2 units from his previously routed units each turn. This is if he plays this card. He can choose one of these options. If the inspired unit is Cav, it's also double in pursuit. He may not use this option against the city. Cav maneuver. This may be what I remember about Cav not being allowed against cities or something. If the Carthaginian Cav units outnumber the Roman Cav by 2 to 1, then all Carthaginian cavalry units get an extra attack die per combat round. That could be really potent. If Hannibal pursues, his Cav are an additional +1. So those are 2 separate parts to that option. The pursuit doesn't get extra die rolls. Can't use against the city. Hannibal on the march defines Hannibal's option when he plays the card. Extended march, he can make an extended march without attrition. Secret mountains pass, he can cross a mountain without suffering attrition. Retreat, he can retreat from combat at any time without suffering pursuit. The council he's engaging must end his turn in that zone and may not make any further attacks, because otherwise he could just march forward and attack him again. Hannibal may not attack anything in this zone on his next turn. The council may draw an option card, but he may not be promoted because of this. Escape by sea. Hannibal and any 5 units can move by sea to anywhere on the map. He may move through Roman naval units, and he doesn't have to embark or debark at a port. No attrition. Surprise march, he can go past a council, and that council may not interfere with his move. He may not attack anything in that zone, but he may move to another zone and attack there or do something there. Treachery. These are some additional cards that they give some explanation to. Treachery. Hannibal can play this against a city in order to eliminate all the intrinsic garrison. Gallic aid, Macedonian aid. He's able to get some bonuses off of this. So, for example, he gets the Macedonian navy, but he doesn't get a full intervention. Gallic aid, he gets some Gauls. Pontian aid, I remember seeing these guys here somewhere. I'm not seeing him now. Hannibal can play it after a victory if he controls 8 cities in Italy. This allows him to remove naval factors, and replace them with his own. That's why. Extended march. Anybody can make an extended march without attrition. Roman siege. When the Romans play this card, it eliminates some of the intrinsic garrison. And the units attacking are a +1 except against Syracuse or Carthage. Okay, the victory conditions for the game. Rome has to capture Carthage, eliminate Hannibal, or survive. If they survive the 20 turns, they win. Some optional rules we're going to use. It says not to use them, but we should. Hannibal may use one of the Senate's allowed actions to make an extended march, so he can take 2 actions per turn. I'm not sure what that's supposed to mean. I'm assuming without attrition, because otherwise he could make the extended march anyway, right? Scipio can go to Spain without Senate approval, and if Spain is in Roman control, he can go on to Africa without Senate approval. When he uses this option, he may only take 10 or less land units and 10 or less naval factors. Hasdrubal can move between Spain and Gaul without Senate approval. He doesn't suffer Gallic attrition ever, and if he gets permission to go to Italy, his army cannot be reduced to less than 10 units by attrition by crossing the mountains into Italy. Cav have an attack factor, there we go, of 1 for storming or defending cities. They keep any intrinsic attack bonus they have, though, so they're less effective on storming cities. Macedonia will enter the war if the Carthaginian player controls any 6 major cities in Italy at the beginning of his turn. Syracuse counts as one of these. Just an additional way to get them in. Gallic units which are routed are eliminated. And they actually have a little star on them, which I've wondered what it meant. I think that may be to indicate that. Who knows? That is it. We got a little cheat sheet here on the back. And it doesn't sound bad, but I just don't seem to grasp it as to what I'm going to be doing. Of course, this is such a weird campaign that may make sense that I wouldn't grasp it, because I'm not that clever. All right. I don't know at what pace I'll be playing this. Probably slower than others. Like I said, I'm in kind of a funk recently, and I may be playing a lot of video games instead of doing my normal gaming. We'll see. Maybe this will pull me out of it.